I'm Dr. Amber Brooks.
I'm Dr. Kristen Trulier-Jackson.
I'm Dr. Tamika Dawson-Knox.
I'm Dr. Lakeisha Legree.
And this is the Cape MD.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us on another episode of the Cape MD. As we initially discussed or introduced you to a tough topic that we'll discuss today, I call it the D word, or depression. And the reason I started off by saying the D word is because by terming it the D word, it illustrates that depression, for whatever reason, has a stigma associated with it. So this episode, we're really going to dig deep into what depression is, why does this stigma exist, how to recognize it, and more importantly, how to avoid or treat. So I think what I'll do, ladies, is start off with a scenario and a name, and then we'll kind of go from there. It's a little untraditional to start off this way, but you might recognize his name as well. So we're looking fly today. I love the zebra print. I'm loving the checkers. I'm loving the all solid black. So having said that, fashion is something that we love. We're physicians, we work hard, we like fashion. So I'm gonna throw out a name, Kate Spade. What does that name mean to you? How does that resonate?
I mean, I think it's hard. That's a woman you thought had everything. Great family, her child, great company, visionary, built this company from the ground up, sold it, had everything to live for, and then was gone from suicide.
Yeah. I think the first thing that pops into my head when I heard the news that Kate Spade committed suicide was shock. First was shock, and then why? Right. You know, from the outside looking in, it appeared as though she had everything, like she had it all. You know, I mean, it's Kate Spade. Kate Spade clothes, Kate Spade bag, Kate Spade, Kate Spade, Kate Spade, Kate Spade. That's a household name, you know. So that's not something that I would have thought that we would ever hear about. You know. What about you, Dr. Kristen? What do you think when you hear that?
I think the questioning the why, when of course we don't know her, but I think that's what happens with celebrities in particular. We feel like we know them because we see them and we hear them talk. We check their profile on Instagram. You know, we feel a sense of connection to them. So when something so sudden and unexpected happens, the shock is very real. But at the same time, I did not know this woman. I didn't know what demons she battled. I didn't know the challenges that she faced day in and day out. And so sometimes, you know, we're quick to be like, I can't believe it. But at the end of the day, we have no idea what she was battling. Yeah.
That's interesting that you say, you know, we think we know people. I'm gonna throw another name out. This is for you, Dr. Amber. Because in my head, he was my boy. I learned a lot from him in the kitchen. Anthony Bourdain. What does that mean for you, Dr. Amber?
Yeah, so, you know, it's funny because my husband and I, we used to really enjoy watching his show and still enjoy watching the reruns that came on. And again, I think I echo a lot of what Kristen said about, you know, you think that you know people based on their social media presence or their television personality presence, but you just never know what people are going through. You know, every day as professionals, we're expected to show up, and especially for us in healthcare, you're expected to show up for your patients every day, and yet we're human beings who may be dealing with a variety of different issues, whether it be depression or anxiety. And so you just never know what people are struggling with behind closed doors, and many people struggle silently.
Yes, very important.
And I think another thing that it hits home when you see a celebrity that you have a connection with that commits suicide, it also makes you check yourself. Like, who am I not checking on? Which one of my friends do I know is going through a hard time, who's going through a divorce, or some type of separation or a breakup, and I haven't called to check on them. So it checks me in the way that I need to call you and just be there to hear you. Because sometimes we're not always, we're busy.
Right.
You know, I have kids, I have a husband, I have work, you know, very real obligations, but I also have friends that I love, family that I love. I need to realize that sometimes I need to check in on them because they may be going through something that I may be able to help them with.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Sometimes it's not even just checking on the ones that you know are going through something.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to check on our friends, the ones that are always the strong one, the one that always seems to have it together.
I know some strong ladies on this here panel that I have had to get in a car and go lay eyes on myself to check in to say, yo, are you okay? Because you weren't sounding good on the phone and you rushed me off way too quickly. You haven't been returning my calls. That's okay. I'm getting in this car.
So this is an excellent segue. And I think, you know, what makes our show, the Cape MD, so different is we talk to you about real clinical issues. We bring you evidence-based medicine, but we also bring you ourselves. We bring you our life. We bring you transparency. And just to put it out there, I was that girl she was calling on. This is my friend for 20 years. And clinical depression is something that I suffered from, and also something called functional depression that we'll get into. But the one thing I want to highlight before we get into that is myth versus fact. Because for some reason, people assume that depression has a certain look. And I don't know if that's related to social media and the assumption that people who portray this awesome image or this awesome life on social media, or even celebrities or professional athletes, that the assumption of happiness correlates with your financial status.
Right.
That can be the furthest from the truth. So the first thing I think we should convey to our audience is that depression has no characteristics.
Nope.
There's no look like, hello, I'm Dr. LaGree. I suffer from clinical depression. You know, you can't look at somebody and expect them to look a certain way or look less than. It could be the person who is at the top of the food chain that's impacted.
Absolutely. So can you highlight some of them or discuss some of the symptoms that as friends or as professionals or as family members that we should be aware of?
Absolutely. So clinical depression has multiple signs and symptoms, but the primary sign or symptom that people often brush aside is fatigue. How many of your friends have said, I am exhausted, I am so tired, I have this going on and that going on and that going on, and no matter how much sleep you get, you still feel exhausted. So fatigue is a huge, huge sign. Dr. Amber touched on another sign. If you notice that in your loved one, they are perhaps not as outgoing as they used to be. If you all have girls' night once a month, then you notice that they stop showing up at girls' night. If I'm rushing you off the phone, like, okay, bye. Or I'm not answering the phone calls when usually I'm Johnny on the spot. So it's the small, subtle changes. And then another big change is lack of interest in activities that you would usually find joy in, whether that's being a parent or being a physician. And you know, we all have small pits in our life where we have lack of interest. You know, you don't feel like doing anything, you stay on the couch for a day.
Right.
You don't feel like talking to anybody, so you don't talk to anybody. But the timing is important. So
Right.
if all these things happen and it's been 2 weeks or more, then that is when you really want to either self-check if you can. Most people can't. But that's when loved ones around you want to do self-checks or check-ins, like Dr. Tamika was saying.
Right.
So, Dr. Lakeisha, can you kind of give us a way that we can distinguish what would be diagnosed as clinical depression from, let's say, burnout? That a lot of professionals, a lot of parents suffer from burnout. And some of those symptoms can be seen in burnout, the fatigue, the, you know, it may be perceived as a lack of interest by someone else, but it may just be, I'm tired, and I just don't, I love to do that, but I just don't have the energy to do it.
Exactly.
So how can we kind of distinguish, and if people do not take care of themselves when they see that they're burnt out, can that then lead to depression if it's not checked?
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked, because burnout is actually a precursor to clinical depression.
Exactly.
And so if the burnout is not addressed, then there's a very, very fine line or a slippery slope. So burnout, as you said, can also present as exhaustion or fatigue. So for example, we're physicians, depending upon the specialty, you work 60 plus hours. In training, 80 plus hours. Some people in training, some older physicians, 100-hour work weeks. Can you imagine 100-hour work weeks? And I think as female physicians, there's an additional stress because you also have a life at home. So just to use our life as a scenario, you know, anesthesia residents, you take call. Sometimes your calls are 24 hours straight. So on call means you work straight. Can you imagine getting off call, going home to a newborn that you have to nurse every 2 hours, and then you have to go back to work that same day for another 24-hour shift, and doing that for a whole month? Everybody gets tired of that. And so excessive fatigue stems from excessive stress and demands on your life. And the issue is when those demands and those stressors go unchecked. So you have to recognize when, quite frankly, there's just too many damn things on your plate.
Right.
You can't be the yes girl all the time.
Right.
You know, Dr. Amber, can you help us facilitate how to learn to say no?
Yes. So 2 years ago, I was just doing too much. I had too much on my plate. I was being asked to do too much, and I had to learn how to say no. And so I shared this. We were on a girls' trip together, and I shared this with them, and just the power of these two sentences. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. However, I do not have the capacity. I do not have the capacity to take this on. Thank you. Sincerely, Amber K. Brooks, MD. Those two sentences were the most freeing sentences. And you know what? Because everybody is at capacity, most people understand. 99% of them are like, yo, I get it. Thank you. I understand. The other 1% can kick rocks.
Right, with no socks.
So speaking of that same trip, it was when I realized that I had burnout, and that my burnout had turned from burnout to stress to clinical depression.
How did you realize that, Dr. Tamika?
I started to realize it before. I had lost two significant people in my life. My grandmother had passed away, and then 2 years later, my aunt had passed away. And at this point, it had been maybe 2 years after my aunt had passed away, and I was still not handling it well. And I made every excuse not to go on the girls' trip. I was like, oh, I don't need to go. I'll be okay. You have other friends going. You'll be good. I'm going to just stay home. And you were like, no, you're going. And finally, I was like, fine, I'll go. But I realized that I was really clinically depressed when I got a phone call from a medical student. And I was burned out. And
On vacation. We're on vacation.
And I get a call. Now, clearly, they know I'm on vacation. I have an out message. And she's like, she just calls me. And it's like, I need you to fix this. And it's like, and it was something that she did wrong. And I was like,
the fact that she had your cell phone number,
that's a lot.
it was a lot.
How we allow people to have so much access to our lives, especially in in this day and age of immediate access via text or cell phone or whatever the mode of communication is. Like, too much access. You were on vacation.
Right.
And it was.
So I heard three things that you said. I heard, number one, that you lost loved ones. We all lose loved ones, but I think the importance is to know the difference between when grieving and when grieving transitions into clinical depression. So the difference is timing. So grieving is a natural process. Right. It's okay to grieve. But when your grieving is prolonged, and let's say it's 1 year, 2 years out, it's not grieving anymore. That's a clinical sign.
And what was interesting is I'm a crier. So, we watched Tracy Ellis Ross this morning, and I'll tear up at a little commentary.
All this makeup on. We could not handle her this morning.
And I realized I stopped crying. So I was like, I'm not depressed.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
So I just kept going because I couldn't cry.
Yeah.
That was a sign that
Yeah.
I was depressed.
No
and I
tears left.
There was nothing left. I was void of anything. I was just going through the motions.
Yeah.
And so on that trip, it was kind of like an aha moment when you were like, I do not have the capacity, because I was like, I don't have the capacity for anything else. I got to take a time out.
Yeah.
Right,
So
for
that's
yourself.
that's the second thing, is when you were saying that you realized you had too much on your plate. Why do you think we put so much on our plate? Is it obligation? Is it fear of saying no? Is it we're trying to climb this ladder to get to the next position, so you want to be the pleaser? What is it? Why do we keep saying yes?
I think it depends. You know, everybody is different. For me, at the time, I was a people pleaser. But let me tell you, I turned 40 last October.
Woo.
Child, there is something about turning 40
It is definitely something about turning
where you just, it empowers you to just be comfortable in your skin. And frankly, I don't give a damn what anybody else thinks about me and my decisions and walking in my purpose. And so if it does not align with my purpose, I have the right to say no. And again, it's just, there's this light switch and this wonderful thing about turning 40 that, like, boom. And maybe it was because I was watching other friends who were living in their early 40s, like living out their best life, living out their dreams. And I'm like, I want some of that. But prior to that, I was very much a people pleaser. Like, I just didn't want to let you down. And God forbid somebody like asked me to my face. Like, I couldn't tell them no to their face because I would feel so guilty. Like, I'm letting you down.
And see, for me, it was the reverse. I'm not as much a people pleaser. I thought I was, though, until we went to that show a month ago. I thought I was a people pleaser. Like, I wanted people to be happy. But no, I like to be in control. And so if people are offering me leadership roles where I am taking that control, I'm liking it. I enjoy that superwoman.
It's almost like that
It's
type
a-
A,
yes,
put
it's
another accomplishment on the
that
checklist.
notch. Yes, I am very type A. I can do that. Absolutely, I can handle that. But what happens when you're handling all these things and some of them do not align with your purpose, and you are doing things you do not want to do just because you have that type A personality? Because because you can do it does not mean you should do it.
Right.
And that was something I had to, and I was starting to feel very resentful for all the things that I was saying yes to.
Right.
How can I feel resentful to something I'm saying yes to?
Right.
Well, part of that was the depression. I could not see that.
Yeah. So to play devil's advocate, Dr. Kristen, what do we do when we want to take control of our life back, but we don't want to say no because the people who are imparting these stressors and demands on our life are the people closest to us, our parents, our grandparents, our siblings? What do you do?
It's hard. I think having support is key, because I know when I went through, a lot of my childhood, I did have a parent that did suffer from depression. And having other family members around to kind of be there for me, be that mother figure that I needed at the time, to be a cousin that I needed at the time that was like a sister. Those were very important roles.
So people you could talk to.
Absolutely. And I think that support for people who do have family members that suffer from depression is important also. And with it having a genetic component, that's just always something that was in the back of my mind as well.
Right. I'm glad you said that too, because in addition to having a genetic predisposition, societal or environmental factors can be a cause. In addition to a chemical imbalance can also be a cause. So now that we've sort of laid out what clinical depression is and we've talked about burnout, I think there's one term that a lot of people don't know exists, and that's really applicable to us up here as mom physicians, is functional depression. Before I heard the term functional depression, I didn't even know it existed. And so functional depression is individuals who society would view as otherwise having high achievements, high socioeconomic status, and therefore, what do you have to be sad about? You have a good job, you have money in the bank. What could you possibly be sad about? You're a professional basketball player. You're a professional football player. What's the guy, Junior Seau? Yeah, we can argue he had CTE, which is a whole nother issue that we'll do a segment on later. But, what could you possibly be sad about?
Right.
So functional depression is when you continue to go, stresses, demands, and it becomes your norm.
Yes.
And that's where the danger lies, because that's when people don't seek help.
Yes.
That's when people don't seek treatment or therapy, because they feel like society puts this pressure on you that you're fine, or like you said, you don't even have a reason to be depressed.
Yeah.
And so you feel like, okay, well, maybe I just need to shake it off.
Right.
I don't really need the help. I just need to get it together.
Right.
But that's where the danger lies.
And in communities of color, especially, with regards to recognizing the signs and then treating it, we want to pray things away.
Oh, yes.
Just take it to the Lord in prayer.
And if you don't pray things away, you're not a good Christian.
Right.
That's right.
And hey, there is nothing wrong with praying for depression, for signs of depression. But there are also other important treatments
Yes.
that are life-saving.
Yeah, and just like, one of my favorite singers, Mary was Erica Campbell. She has this song where, I went to every prayer service, every Bible service, every Wednesday night, every Monday night, every Sunday night, every Saturday. And then what do you do when you're still in the same place? I feel as though if you are a spiritual person, you can pray about it, but that same spiritual person also has a God who provided medications, who provided therapists, counselors, alternative online text therapy now, alternative treatments such as ketamine that I also provide in my clinic. And so it's important that if you recognize these signs, yes, use your faith, but yes, reach out and just talk to one person. You just need one person, which kind of brings me to what we can talk about in terms of prevention. So maybe Dr. Amber, tell us a little bit of what you do to try to avoid burnout so that it doesn't fall into a clinical depression.
Right. So, oftentimes in my professional life and in my personal life, I'm constantly pouring into others. And for me, that's part of my purpose for being on this earth, is to pour into others and to help others, much like I'm sure you all, that's part of the reason that we went into healthcare. However, it is not sustainable unless you're also pouring into your own cup.
That is very true.
And so you need to find ways that you can pour into your own cup. Sometimes for me, it looks like doing nothing. Like I just have to be. I just have to have an afternoon of no activities, no expectations set upon me, and I just have to be.
And feel okay with that.
And not be guilty.
Not be guilty. Yes. I mean, I spend my birthday alone every year. I enjoy that. That is, I literally work and talk to people all day. I'm with my children. When I'm not with my patients, I'm with my children and my husband. So on my birthday, I like some alone time, some quiet time to pray and meditate. And people always want to make me feel guilty about that.
Yeah.
And so it's about checking them too, because if you don't enjoy spending time with yourself, something's not right.
Right.
Because we all should enjoy spending a little bit of time with us.
Learning who you are, what
Absolutely.
you want, which leads me to the statement of knowing what your core values are. I was asked that question in counseling. Yeah, I go to counseling. I sit on the couch every month.
Every month.
Okay?
Yes.
Every
Almost
month.
like getting your hair done.
Yes.
I go to counseling. So
Every month.
what are your core values? And if what someone is asking you to do, as Dr. Amber so eloquently stated, if it doesn't align with your core values, then it's simple. The answer is no, because otherwise, why are you doing it?
Right.
So spend some time alone with yourself. Be okay with yourself to learn your core values. I think that's important. And the second thing I think is important is it's okay to not be okay.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
There's no shame in not being okay. Everybody goes through it at some point. One tough statistic, 1 out of every 6 people in this entire United States will suffer from clinical depression. So that means in a room of 10, you look to your right, you look to your left. Guess what? If it's not you, it's somebody in the room.
Yep.
And from a physician standpoint, did y'all know that every day one physician commits suicide?
Absolutely.
Of every profession in the United States, we have the highest rate of suicide. I had no idea. So I say all this to say, I think it's important for us, particularly women of color, to break the chain of stigma that depression holds in
Absolutely.
our culture by talking about it.
Yeah.
It's okay. You know, you talk about your ingrown toenails, you talk about your pimple and your keloids, so talk about depression
Yep.
and get help for
Absolutely.
that too.
Yep.
Okay?
And the stigma of therapy.
Yes.
And the stigma of therapy, that's right, that's right. So we will continue this, probably not so much conversation, but we'll post some tools that you all can use with respect to therapy, with respect to treatment. There are oral antidepressants out there. There are alternative treatments such as intravenous ketamine. You can do acupuncture, yoga. The point is to pour into your cup, as Dr. Amber said, to prevent any burnout turning into clinical depression.